Hi there, Plant Girl here. Today I am going to be repotting my Sansevieria plant. Some people know this plant as mother-in-law's tongue or snake plant. It has a lot of common names. I think it's a pretty common house plant. It can survive in almost any conditions. In fact, my mom always said she wasn't much of a plant person, and this was the only plant she could keep alive. And so she was always quite pleased with this plant because didn't matter what she did, she couldn't kill it. So if you're new to house plants or have trouble keeping house plants alive, I think this is a great plant, a great beginner plant to try. It can handle low light, it can handle high light. It likes to dry out, but if you overwater it a little bit, unless it sits in soggy water for weeks and weeks, it's probably going to be okay. So this is a plant that you definitely need to give it a try. It doesn't need a lot of extra attention. I think this one has been in this pot for, I would say it's been closer to 2 years in this pot. And it's just now showing me that it needs to move on. So some of the ways that I can tell that it needs to move on. First, I noticed it's starting, I don't know if you can see, but it's starting to lean to the side. And as it was leaning to the side and it was constantly drying out, like dry, and I normally don't water this very often, but I was watering it every week or more often because it was so dry all the time. And then I noticed it started throwing up a pup over here. And I think it's trying to get a little root on the side here. I'll try and get you maybe a little closer for that. We'll move the camera around and let you have a look. So I just wanted to show you better. You can really see from this angle, like how much it's just started to grow to the side there. So I knew something was up with it when it started growing sideways because it's always grown straight up. And then when I started to see this little pup here, you see the little baby coming out there. So then I knew something was definitely up with this plant here. So it's time to move it up to another size. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to see if I can get some of this top dressing. Like I said, Sansevieria is not too fussy of a plant, so I'm just going to fill the pot. I just have a mix with some generic potting soil. There's a little bit of cinnamon, and it has a little bit of perlite in it, but nothing special. Don't need anything fancy for these plants. And these pots have no drainage, and like I said, this plant isn't going to care at all. So unless it really gets waterlogged and gets left like that for a long time, it's not going to matter one bit to this plant. So I'm just going to give it a little pull. There it comes. Oh, I ripped most of the roots off. That wasn't the plan. That's how bound it was in this pot. Look at the roots that were growing on it. That's pretty neat. Unfortunately, I ripped them off. With some plants that would concern me, but this plant, not so much. So you can see here, it's starting to grow this little, I think this is probably a little nub, like it's trying to grow either another little baby off of it or a bit of roots out of here. But I think from the feel of around here, it's trying to grow more roots off. Has some roots attached up here higher. And has the baby here, and then it has some more leaves coming out below. So I think I'm just gonna pop that off like that, plant this up, and we'll just see how it does like this. You can see how indestructible I feel this plant is because I'm not worried about tearing the roots or damaging it in any way. And I'm just gonna put that top dressing back on. And there. I have this baby now, and I have this part here. So let's see. Looks like I need so I just cut those apart. They both have some roots on them. And now we have a couple more plants. I think I'll put the baby in this smaller pot here. It's just a little bit smaller. So I've seen people start these from leaf cuttings, just taking a leaf, and I've seen people just stick it in the soil. I've seen people start it in water and get roots. From what I've ever seen, that is going to probably take months. And the ones in water I've seen, they rot off and people are trimming them and cleaning them up on a regular basis, or they just have this kind of rotten sludge sitting there and hope for the best. I have only tried once to take one and root it by the leaf. I didn't have luck with it. That could have been because I didn't have patience for months to wait for it to get going again. It wasn't that critical to me. These are pretty cheap to just find in the stores around here. If you've ever grown one from a leaf cutting, I'd love to hear about it, see what your thoughts are on it. You can get these, they come in a lot of different varieties, and for the most part they all have a very similar look. There's just a slight difference in you know, the coloring might be a little bit more white or a little bit more yellow. The stripes might be more or less prominent, and depending on how much light you give it too, the coloring can change a little bit as well. So if it looked one way in the store and then it's changed after a few months at your house, it could just be that it's in different lighting than what it had at the store. So there, we'll take this one, stick it in there. So it's not necessary to top dress these. I just think, especially being that they're such an upright structural plant that way, that otherwise you see a lot of the soil. Or another thing that you could do is just underplant it with succulents. Would do really well with this plant because it doesn't need a lot of water and it can take different light conditions. So you could underplant it with some succulents to fill in the soil, or some other house plants if you wanted, just to clean up that soil look a little bit if you wanted. So there, now I have 3 plants where I just had the one that was leaning awkward and looking kind of funny. So for these 2 smaller plants, because I cut them in half, I am just going to leave them for a little bit, just like you would with a raw cut edge of a succulent or something. They're not a succulent as far as I know, but I just don't want to water them too soon. I want to give it a couple weeks, a week for sure, just to make sure that that wound has time to kind of callus over. And then I will, I'll give them a little watering. The other one, I could water right away, but that's all there is to it. Like I said, this is a pretty sturdy plant. I think it would take a lot to kill it other than freezing temperatures. Definitely an easy care plant. Doesn't ask much of you. You can pretty much ignore it. And be a great plant if you want to give it as a gift for a beginner, someone that you know that wants to get into houseplants but isn't sure what to do with them. This would be a good one to give them a little confidence and feel like they can handle it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of my videos and you haven't done so already, then hit that subscribe button. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.